and mining in general, the national contributes about 8.1% in terms of the GDP of the province. So looking at the 32, it suggests that if you can go through most of the sectors, mining is followed by community services, which is sitting at 21.6. So the questions that would arise as well, that what are the benefits of the people of the Northwest in that 32.5%? Mining, of course, has a huge potential to positively impact on the establishment of infrastructure such as roads. The acting premier spoke yesterday and said, when a mining house sets up a mine, do they only do a road that is only for their own business, or do they do infrastructure and roads that would benefit the economic value chain of the whole area in which they promote in? So it's one of those debates. And we believe that mining has a potential really to contribute to the establishment of, including commercial enterprises. And obviously that in turn would increase the economic opportunities that communities in that area benefit from. And I believe there's a direct link between mining, economic growth, and employment. I mean, there's no industry where you can open once and appoint 2,000 in these days except for mining. If you open a mine, you're looking at 2,000 up to 10,000 employment. I mean, direct employment created. And the one part that I would like to add is that the multiplier effect, I think, when you look at mining as an economic activity, the input industries are attributable to mining, most input industries. If you look at how many industries are producing, I always argue with my colleagues in many forums, SEZ and so on, from the DTI, and when the MDC refer to the SEZ, which I'll refer a little bit later. When you establish the SEZ, I always say when Gauteng started off as a mining town, and the East Rand was an input supplier park for the Gauteng mines. Now currently there are no mines in Gauteng. Gauteng has developed in that it has got finance, strong financial services, IT and so on. We are having Rustenburg or Bujanala, where now we are having mines. I think there's over 300 operating mines in the province. Now what is the relationship? Why can't we use the same model that was using that we then translate or move those sectors to start operating closer to where the mines are so that the province can benefit from that, just as I think it has happened over time with Gauteng. In general, almost 72% of all the energy needs are from mining. I think a colleague earlier on said that there are smelters that are closing, about 42 or something like that, that are not working because of energy. And this is quite a serious issue that I think, of course, policy makers are here. It's something that needs to be looked into. And the whole argument that would come and say, in the Northwest, do we, and I think my notes said, when we find that most of those smelters are not even based in the Northwest, where the bulk of the production happens. Mining sector pays nearly double the GDP share in corporate tax. Most of the corporate tax that's paid is paid by mining. And like I say, I'll refer to some of the statistics which is largely available. In the Northwest, mining contributes 86% of all the exports that come from the province of the Northwest are from mining. The rest is quite marginal. So, and the one part that I think I would say, in terms of Stats SA, there's what is called the social multiplier effect. If somebody is employed, the salary that you get, how many people do you feed? The Stats SA says that if you, one miner is likely to feed about 10 people. So technically, if you give one person, one miner a job in mining, the likelihood is that that salary is going to share by almost 10 people. So it shows the levels at which they. So when you look at it, if we have about 458 mines in the country, 458,000, it means almost 4.5 million people are relying on mines. When we take it down, obviously, this sector in the Northwest, we have almost about 1.3 million employed. So almost about 129 people are benefiting from that. But to add on what the acting premier said, the bulk of this 129 beneficiaries could not be in the Northwest, because most of the people that are employed by these mines are either foreigners or they come from the Eastern Cape or somewhere else, which is something else. I think he elaborated much on that. Colleagues, this is another statistics in terms of the jobs created, and there's over 300 active mines in the province. I know that when a lot of people see 300 mines, you are thinking the big Marikana one and so on. I think my colleagues from TMR maybe would explain, because even when you do crushing, you have to apply for a mining license. So when you talk about mining in this context, you are referring to stone crushing, you are referring to the sand that is used for construction, because you need a mining license even to excavate that sand. So when we talk about this, because when you look at 300, you are thinking of those big mines in Rustenburg, you say, but I only see 4 or 5. And there's there's a lot of jobs, and I don't want to attribute it much to the fourth industrial revolutions, but there is history and it is coming, and it is starting to show that most of the mines are automating, and in them automating, that impacts on jobs. So there has to be a discussion around how can we deal with this issue of automation versus fourth industrial revolution versus job losses, because there's a negative growth in terms of job creation in mining, and bulk of the mines in the province side, the catchment area where there's gold, fluorspar in Zeerast, and large deposit of PGMs in the Rustenburg area. And in the Bujanala area, I think this is the part that I think the MEC spoke about that. In trying to contribute to the beneficiation, because there's no economy in this world that has not grown in the backdrop of manufacturing. If you have a lot of, I think, primary, what you produce primarily, it always works. If you produce, then you beneficiate before you sell. And our challenge, which was raised by the premier area, is that the bulk of the thing, we extract the minerals and then we export them and then we buy. However, now the debate that's there is that how then do we industrialize to try and make sure that the resources that are in the Northwest Province are used by the province itself. So this SEZ component which the MEC raised, and later on my colleague, the project executive, in one of the sessions, is going to unpack the whole concept and what is it that we are looking at. We are looking at least assisting to do mineral beneficiation. We are looking at talking about new technologies that can be developed. We are looking at attracting investment. We are also looking at least creating jobs in this sector. Because the link of the SEZ, when it is placed in Bujanala, just outside Rustenburg, in Mohase, and its potential to supply all the mines that are in the area, it's quite promising. However, the one challenge that I think, as the MEC said, that we have applied to the DTI and Cabinet has said on, there is this thing that they are raising that is new in the SEZ environment, where they say, what is the relationship between government, which is ourselves, and private sector? What is the role of private sector? So part of us being here today is to try and engage and get to partner and seek an understanding where we open up and say, here's an opportunity for mining houses, here's an opportunity to talk to your suppliers to come and locate closer to you and benefit from this SEZ, which is, I think, part of it. When you manufacture within an SEZ environment, you are likely to get quite a lot of incentives, which obviously will impact on your price in which you sell your stuff to the mines. I say and I argue that in the Northwest Province, by far the largest platinum group metal producer, contributes almost 55% of the national PGM output, almost 55% of platinum group metal that is produced in this province. However, if you can look at it, you hardly find smelting services within the province. You hardly find refining services that they are still in Johannesburg in the province. You don't have much mineral processing. You do not have a lot of equipment manufacturing that is produced in the province. You contract mining, most of it is outside the province. Geological services, equipment supply, recover chemical from waste. One of the colleagues, I think, who's here, a black-owned production, women-owned company, presented earlier and said she's manufacturing issues part of this. Now, what we argue as NWC is that given these opportunities that are there, given the fact that the mining companies that operate there have got partners and so on, how is it that we can partner to try and see to it that in the process of Northwest benefiting from the resources that are dug from the province, how can we try and assist? We might not partner in the sense, of course, mining is a heavily financially involved process. IDC is here, and I think how then can we try and move some of these activities where we try and produce these things either within the SEZ or either within the industrial parks that are there in the Rustenburg area and other areas, your Klerksdorp and so on. How then can we start talking to that? So part of the discussions that will take place maybe should come or revolve around this. There's also an opportunity of beneficiation in a sense that my colleague said earlier on, platinum and diamond jewelry. We produce platinum, we produce diamond, but we don't produce that. Medical instrument, auto catalyst, diamond cutting, and so on. So what we are having obviously is something that we still obviously engaging on in the shareholder and discussing. It's something similar to this. I know that this stems from the debate that you find from time to time that says, should government participate in the business of mining? Should government play a role in the business of mining? And I always argue with my colleagues and say, government is already participating in the business of mining. My colleagues from IDC, I'm not sure when they present earlier, a company like IDC, which is 100% owned by the state, already has shares in more than 3 or so operating mines. And those investments were done obviously pre-democracy. And now IDC is benefiting from those investments in that whatever it gets from those benefits, it is using them obviously to continue to run their mandate, which is funding SNLP. Palabora Mine is one of the entities where IDC is a shareholder. I think Fosco, I think Inuala Resources, I mean there's a couple. So when you look at it in the context that says, how then can the province of Northwest try and want to play in that space so that government itself can make any other profits out of the mining and then Mr. Gunene declared dividends of some sort that can be used for other social things out there. Because if you lose that model, you look at it, IDC has invested in mining, they are making a lot of the bulk, some of their dividends come from it, and they use that and say. So when somebody says the state is not paying, there's quite a lot of couple of other state-owned enterprises that are in that space. I mean, earlier on, as it was, I used to work for the agency in Limpopo. The agency itself has a subsidiary that has 13 licenses and about 4 operating mines. And most of them, it is the state, together with the communities where the Koshi stay, and the BEE having partnered and then engage the GMR and then apply for licenses. Like I think Koshi earlier on said, in most cases you sit here, you are a tribe, you own the land, and you don't probably know that there's resources beyond. As you are there, somebody walks in and say, I have a license, it was awarded by GMR. I think that it was raised in the context of consultation. And when you look at how do you play, yes, the codes now will try and force you to partner or play with those communities. But in most cases, like I think rural areas like your Northwest, you might find that those communities have an opportunity to try and play in this space if they are assisted. And another theory that I have, that I use, I think maybe around the funding of mining. When you go to GMR, you apply for a prospecting license. GMR will award you unconditionally. But before you can get an investor, you must do what is called, I think, prospecting. And in South Africa, I don't know, there's quite a few people who fund prospecting. Now the question arises, who must play in this space? Because even IDC only plays post-prospecting. There's no funding for prospecting. Now if you have this mining prospecting license and you want to get into this industry, who must close that gap? So those are some of the debates I think we might have to engage in later on to see how can we do a role clarification of some sort. Because for us to really open this sector that is so close to everybody else to play, somebody must play and try and close that part, which is first level you get a prospecting license, you need to do prospecting. And prospecting of mining, I think in platinum it ranges from about 10 to 50 million or something. So then who is closing that part? So I believe that part of the debate as we go on, we might have to see to it. I'm talking to ourselves, the IDC colleagues and so on, to say, look, yes, it is correct that we are funding, but why are we saying that? Who do we expect to assist these communities to close that part they are prospecting? And additional services that NWC can offer. We also run a division called Trade and Investment Promotion, I think S1 Investment West. In there we try and facilitate joint venture and partnership. We work with mining sector to try and do enterprise development. We are also trying to look at financing options because from time to time when there are investors and there are, so if you have probably a credible business plan or a credible, if you had already passed this stage that I say it has not funded, you can engage us, we can see if at some stage there's this international missions, we can always try and partner you, and people who come into the province wanting to invest in that. And IDC, of course, as a partner, I think we have a development forum where we sit with them. We can also place it there so that funding can be. Yes, of course, the issue, we also do export market development. We do investment facilitation promotion. We also then facilitate internal market access. Before I thank you, I think, as I said earlier, that the essence of what we're looking at and what we are trying to present to this house as NWTC and by extension as government, and of course our own will be different because on issues that we try to position ourselves to say, how can we work together? And we are also, when you look at some of the mining houses, the big mining houses that are here, you'll find that the mining house has marginal rights. They've already done all the tests. They've already have the proven reserves on how a mine is. I always say a mine that is worth 100 million for Anglo-American is nothing. But that marginal mine or marginal shaft, if it can be given to a BE or a company that obviously can use that. Those are some of the engagements that we have, because we try to focus a lot. I always say that whether you go to mining in Dava, where you go to forum, we focus a lot on these issues that many do not talk about. Mass participation in terms of ownership of historically disadvantaged people in terms of mining. So at some stage, I think we need to start looking at that level, because like you look at most presentations, we focus on the SLPs and so on. We will never look at the issues of how much benefits or how much I think profits was generated from the Northwest, and out of that profits, how much of it was exported externally, and how much of it is a victim of illicit outflows. So those are some of the things that I believe as we move on into smaller groups, as we move on for the next 12 months, I don't know, let me see how often we'll have this, we need really to really start engaging, to see to it that and take a conscious decision that all the established mines in the province, how can they bring in marginalized communities, historically disadvantaged people into the mainstream ownership, not only in terms of the jobs created, in terms of the money that we earn in terms of that, but in the context of ownership. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pesa. Our next speaker.
Morning, colleagues. Morning, colleagues.
Morning.
Good afternoon already. Okay. Let me take this opportunity to greet Honorable Premier, Acting Premier, respected MCs who are here. I do recognize our traditional authorities also in our midst, and at the same time, ladies and gentlemen who have honored this important occasion. Amongst us, I also have my colleague, Ms. Bongiwema Busela, who is based in DMR head office, and she is responsible for what we call economic empowerment transaction, commonly known as DE. My presentation shall be fairly short. I must just indicate that I received a call in the afternoon on Tuesday from an individual who identified herself as Estelle, and she said, you are expected to present on this particular occasion, of which I agreed that I would certainly come and make a presentation. And having agreed, yesterday I was supposed to deal with other community-related challenges with the Madibeng municipality. So I spent the better part of the day dealing with community-related challenges, in particular focusing on the alignment of SLP and also with what we call the IDPs. The unfortunate part that transpired was that the charger for the laptop just got to be listed thereafter. Now that on its own certainly had a bearing in terms of, I know you will be looking forward for a presentation on some kind of a PowerPoint, but taking into consideration these factors, I then could not, number one, make any written presentation. And safe to say that I know the issues that I'm going to raise here will certainly provoke you and stimulate your interest. And on that basis, I hope that the minister from Madibeng municipality will come here with my laptop charger. I will commit that I'm going to forward the presentation to the organizers once that charger is available. The point of expectation here is that I'm supposed to speak about localization of the mining industry. Obviously, the concept in its nature is quite broad, in terms of how do we define localization. I'm not going to enter into the theory aspects of it, but local is local and local is legal. So in terms of my presentation, I will shortly touch about the legal framework, the instruments which can be used to support localization, and then I will, out of a number of things that we deal with, I will touch about ownership, environmental authorization, procurement, and LED projects. It is important to indicate the fact that the MPRDA in its nature is structured in a manner that is geared towards support of what we call localization. If you were to look at the objects of the MPRDA, you are going to recognize that, among others, it is expected that it gives effect to what we call the principle of sustainable development, in that it recognizes Section 24 of our Constitution, which then dictate that whatever resources are to be exploited should be done in the interest of sustainable development. Now, if you were to unpack sustainable development, where you then say ecological, social, and economical, you will realize that all those three pillars are also pillars which you can find as and when you are doing about the issue of localization. Among others, the MPRD also dictates that the mining companies should contribute substantially within the communities where they operate. Now, this is the legislation which obviously has been structured in that fashion. It also requires that the companies should also ensure that, apart from contribution to the economic development, there must be a meaningful and participation of historical disadvantaged South Africans. I think earlier there was a question which was raised, which came from somebody who is saying, I'm a woman. Not only historical disadvantaged South Africans, but also including women. It has created that kind of enabling an environment in terms of the principle of the MPRDA. By and large, it's a tool of a legislation which is meant to promote economic growth and economic growth as a result of the mineral and petroleum resources which we have in South Africa, particularly on downstream industry. So in terms of the legal framework, we certainly have an instrument which is actually structured in a manner that it is canvassing for this local empowerment, or for what we call localization. Having said this, I must indicate that one of the things which is quite important is the issue of ownership. And much of what we say here is actually as a result of individuals who would have launched an application, being given the rights to exercise or to access these minerals. So the first part that we should think of when we think about localization is about ownership. Who is owning these minerals, which are supposed to belong to all South Africans? Now, by and large, I must admit that in the province, if we were to provide the province, in particular if we were to get into the temptation of thrashing the big mines and say, in Rustenburg, Press, what does the structure of ownership, in particular as to who are these individuals who are owning these minerals? I'm sure the result thereof of your assessment would reflect that we've got very few individuals who particularly would be coming from a respective community which is local, a municipality which is local. If you are to be general and then you say the province, you will find very few mining companies which are being owned by people who are particularly from this province. Or on the other hand, we certainly do have those ones that are owned by people that are coming from this province. In regards to this factor, I think the mining charter, which I have said earlier that it is currently under dispute, then recognizes the fact that there is now a need for communities to participate in relation to the ownership of this mineral, and as a result of that, it now dictates that whoever comes to DMR as an applicant, there should be a certain apportionment which would have been given towards community, and in this case, that dictates that going forward, whenever we then adjudicate this mining right application, there will always be something in relation to the ownership for the communities. I must also indicate that by and large, the majority of people have challenges in terms of knowing how to apply, because it begins with somebody lodging an application. Now, as a result of that, it is important to reflect the fact that apart from ownership, we can also have other instruments that speak largely on how the concept of localities can be enhanced. We also deal with what we call environmental management programs or environmental authorization. In their nature, these are legal instruments that are meant to ensure that the impacts which would have been generated as a result of mining activities, firstly, they must be identified, they must be assessed, and there must be a mitigation measure that says, in the event wherein these impacts are to occur, this is how the company intends to remedy those impacts. And we all know that whenever the mining companies operate, the impacts in their nature are local. In particular, environmental management impacts, they are actually local. I'm confronted with a lot of complaints. Some of the example of these local impacts would be your issue around the dust, the spillages, or an abandonment of the operation where people are now saying there was a mine here and suddenly we are no longer recognizing, or we are no longer seeing what is happening. I think what is critical is that this legal instrument, which is environmental authorization, is meant to be there in the entire lifespan of the mining right, and also it is also meant to guide the mine on how they should remedy the negative impacts which they would have created to the community and also the positive one. On the issue of the LED projects, I think our relationship with municipalities, I always say our relationship with municipalities is actually being driven by the fact that there is an expectation from the IDP that projects must have been identified. All who apply and whosoever apply then is also required to ensure that such application would have identified projects from the IDPs. I must, in mentioning this, indicate that this concept of localities on LED project, we've got issues such as infrastructure development, which can be tapped into, your SMME development, that can also be tapped into, and over and above that, there is not a single person who is expected to operate without implementing the SLP, in particular if you are the holder of the mining right. Lastly, I'm going to just reflect that in relation to the owner, to the procurement, this is a very critical thing, and I don't know how whosoever has really coordinated this invitation has done a great job, because I see important people here on the procurement. One of the critical challenges which we are faced with is that despite the good spirit, in particular of the charter, wherein it would then say 70%, for instance, of the goods that the company would need to acquire should be South African based or should have been bought from South African manufacturing company, and it also dictates that 5% of such should come from women, 44% from historical disadvantaged company or a BEE compliant company. And then it also, in relation to service, dictates that 80% of the service that has to be rendered in a mining sector, 80% of these should come from South African based company, and also 50% of service from historical disadvantaged South African, while 15% of services should be supplied by women. 5% must be spent on service, 10% by BEE compliant companies. and also we have 5% which should be allocated for the youth. Having said this, I must reflect that as it is, part of what we see as a challenge, in particular on procurement, is that historically the industry had some extreme challenges in terms of accommodating, in particular, historical disadvantaged South Africans. Now, procurement is considered as some kind of sacred or no-go area. And this I say because the majority of complaints which I deal with are complaints of people who are saying we're being frustrated. We see companies of people who are historical advantage, they seek this opportunity and they don't go through hassle as we do. Now, this is an important aspect that we need to deal with, because if we are to change the landscape of the mining industry, in particular if we are serious about empowering the local communities, we must change the mindset and the attitude, and we begin to say that we should begin to say that it is also possible that local communities, SMMEs, can also do the similar service that have been historically reserved for white-owned companies. So this is a serious issue, and I hope going forward as we meet in the near future, this is one of the areas where we need to profile as to what is the current change in that area. Having said that, I want to take this opportunity to conclude by mentioning one single statement of saying, with human capacity at local level, at government level, the issue of transformation and the issue that we are advocating is possible. It only requires willingness, and it only takes, where we see there are gaps, people must just be skilled, and having to do these two aspects, in my view, we can be able to really see changes in terms of local benefits. Thank you.
To paint a picture of industry's plan is on achieving local targets. Just a little bit about Hank, who is currently the chief economist at the Minerals Council of South Africa. He's got more than 30 years of applied economic research under his belt. So he's not just an amateur, he's got 10,000 hours that he's put into this whole thing. And he's got a degree in political science, he's got a degree in economics, and he's been involved in both public and private sector. He has sat on a number of boards and panels. Amongst them has been the one that NEDLAC, he's been on BUSA. He's also done a bit of work for the Reserve Bank of South Africa. He was the commissioner for the International Trade Advisory Commission, and today he's going to be talking to us about the mining industry plans on what we are calling localization. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause.
Exposure is very bit dangerous. I've been asked to, thank you for the opportunity, to talk about these issues. And localization of procurement is a passion for the sector. And it's quite important, and when we had the negotiations about the charter, that was committed that we will do as much as we can to actually promote this. But it isn't simple. So I want to touch on those issues, and I want you to now look up from the crocodile and see the big world that we are in. And the importance of, I touched on the importance of us not having any control over our prices and exposed to domestic cost, and how important it is that whatever we buy And this is really the message of the whole thing. Cost for us has to either stabilize or come down. Otherwise, the instability in commodity prices is simply not, the companies is not sustainable. It's a cost, keep on, think about the staircase. The costs are rising, we have very little control over it, and the price fluctuates, and you never know what level you need to be to actually survive. And then the whole idea about a national strategy, and the DTI calls it to reimagine industrialization. And the real message is that mining on its own cannot really do it. And I'm going to show you how we're interrelated with other important sectors in the economy that are buying more or less the same things. We're dependent on one another, we trade with one another, and we buy more or less the same things. Someone has said that you buy valves, and a lot of sectors in the economy buy valves. And the last point is, we really do not know what we're buying. I want to repeat that. In the work that's been done, different things, nobody knows what I want. And that is really what it's about. Without that, and without cooperation amongst different sectors, and with the SABS, you're going to hear from them later, it will not succeed. So those four sectors that you see there are actually nearly 30% of the GDP of the country. And they are interrelated, they buy from one another, like I said, and they buy more or less the same things. And if you look at the multiplier there, you see how important they are. All of them have provisions for localization. The mining sector, in the Mining Charter 3, the DTI, generic codes is for the steel and engineering sector, the construction sector, which does not import much, but they have a charter. And then the transport and logistics, and that's not the auto sector, but transport and logistics, they are developing a charter, or by something by a different name. And the auto sector, of course, as part of the government's incentive program, needs to achieve in 20 years, I think, a 60% target, which is the target that's been set for us. Now, to reiterate this dependency on international commodity prices, what I have there is just how much the country exports and how much mining is exporting. We're exposed to international prices, we are exposed to the exchange rate, and we are exposed to cost, and I don't want to belabor that. But the line underneath that is very important. Normally, and in economic theory, the way you build your own industries is by protecting them. You put tariffs up, or quantitative barriers, or whatever, and then within that protective area, that industry, whatever it is, whether it's clothes or shoes or soap or motor cars, you protect them. By the way, motor industry tariffs are 30%, so we pay 30% more for our cars to protect them, but we have a motor industry with huge amounts of people involved. That cannot be done in mining because we can't pass it on. It cannot be done in mining because we can't pass it on. So it is vital that whomsoever, I like that word, provides to us must be world competitive, and that is virtually equal to, has to produce at scale. Now, just to belabor the point about our dependency on the international market, what you see there, the blue line is China's growth rate. The red one is sub-Saharan Africa, so everything south of the Sahara, so the oil north of it is out of it. Look at the synchronicity of the two, and South Africa underneath it. So, when I'm saying this, I'm not actually mincing the words. It is vital that we are part and can take advantage of the international market. Now this slide, I don't know whether I'm showing it for you or for the suppliers. This is how small mining in South Africa is relative to the total of the world. So that to a degree shows you the potential of whomsoever provides to mining of what the market is out there. The point is you must just be focused on it. That is actually also quite important. And just to finish off, This is just giving you a broader picture of how the mining sector contributes to the economy. On the left-hand scale, the blue line is our contribution to GDP, 7.5, and I'm not talking about the overall mining sector because I will come down eventually. I will come, not down, I will come focusing on the northwest, but I want you to get the bigger picture. The fixed investment is the orange line on the left, and then employment, the yellow at the top, at the bottom. The black line is on the right-hand scale, showing you how much of South Africa's exports is actually done by the mining sector. When the platinum strike was on, and that's very close to you, the person in government that was the most worried was the governor of the Reserve Bank, because we were not exporting platinum, and we needed the foreign exchange to actually service some of our debts. That's how important this is to succeed. So, let me show you what I hope to convey is the dynamics of localization, and going really back to very basic. Mining has different phases. I like to call it the rhythms of mining. You explore and think about any one of these stages as how much can be done or is done by South Africans. You explore, you find something that you want to mine, then you build the mine. The building of mines are virtually done exclusively by South African companies. Then you mine, and this is really where we're talking about, is the procurement from there. The beneficiation we spoke about, the lack of electricity, virtually cancelling that out, and then the marketing and the selling of it, and eventually the rehabilitation and the closure of mines. We can't talk about that much now, but there is huge potential in that as well. And the legal snares there is really a big issue. This I'm not going to stand still much about, but it's probably a surprise to you that mining for decades, that graph starts in 1946. The peak of that area is in 1961. We were more or less the same size. But because other sectors in the economy grew faster, our share of the economy declined. That's all I want to say about that. And now we come to the demand and supply. As against the one that I showed you earlier, which was platinum in the northwest, this is the economy. This is the total mining in the South African economy, and the same thing. About 230 billion rands worth of inputs that we buy, and you can see how much electricity, local supply, transport and logistics, just look at how important that is, and some imports, and that's really the replacement that we could talk about. Value add to the economy, 346 billion, and then on the right hand side it shows you the total turnover of mining, about 580 billion in 2080, and how much we're exporting. Interestingly, that's the amount of coal that we export, 73 billion, and we sell 73 billion of coal, value of coal, a little bit more in volume to Eskom. So just to give you a feeling for how big it is. Now, the next slide, I want to show you the fixed capital number there underneath the blue block. That plus the inputs. I want to show you how that has moved over time, because that gives you the potential of demand in the South African economy, and it looks like that. The black line on the right hand side is how those two portions of what we buy shifted over time. The background is just showing you the percentages in each year, and what it shows is that a larger percentage on the left hand side, the axis, a larger and larger percentage of what we buy is actually fixed investment, so it's plant and equipment and building the mines and the processing equipment for that, as against the intermediary demand, which I will come down to just now. Now, if you break it up, if you take then the procurement, in other words, the manufacturing portion of it, this is how it looked in 2018. There it gives you the broad sectors of the economy. If we take manufacturing, which is the second one from the top, the 48 billion, this is how that looks. And again, it is coking coal and not coke the liquid. But that gives you an idea of what is bought within the South African economy, and there's a percentage that we import. This is the fixed investment that takes place. I said earlier, when we build and construct mines, it's virtually 90%, 100% South Africans. Transport equipment is not that important. Machinery and equipment is massive. Computer and software, and then R&D. I just tried to give you a grip on what's going on. Maybe I should just discuss the left-hand column, the first column of values. That is total fixed investment, but depreciation is in it. So the maintenance of the plant and whatever is in it. The maintenance is the third or the second column from the right. So the new investment, the net investment that took place is about 20 billion. So that gives you an idea of also the potential of the South African, possibly provision of stuff that the mining industry needs. This is the same slide I showed you earlier. This is platinum. And like I said, it's about half of mining in the northwest. And if I then zoom again to the same slide, this is what they are buying in the country, and some of it is in the northwest and some of it is not. If I can sum it up, the dynamics is really about this. The potential impact on this economy is huge. It's about 2. So for every rand we buy, the impact is about 2 rand if we do it properly. The second bullet point there is very important. The negative potential for inefficiencies and higher prices, higher costs through higher prices into the mining sector is also dangerous. And I'm coming back to this infant industry statement that I made. We cannot pass the cost on. We cannot absorb it. We go out of business because that's the only absorption that we have is the profitability. The third one is large enough markets for locally manufactured goods is needed, either here or internationally, and internationally. You need scale, otherwise you can't produce something at a competitive price. The potential of domestic demand from the hardcore, the 4 sectors that I spoke about, and you can probably add the auto sector, in other words, the assemblers of vehicles, is very important and the need for us to coordinate that in a certain way is important. The focus on export demand at scale is important, and the competitiveness of that. So the mining charter, I'm just going to concentrate on the procurement side, and I'm not really going to discuss it. This is what was in the 2004, and these slides are available to whomever you want to give it. This is a 2004 charter. The message here is that the procurement portion did not change virtually. It's still 60% local procurement. Our big worry about it is that to do that blanket is virtually impossible to achieve. So the little dispute that we have with the DMR is really to understand how we got to that and how we can do that actually properly. In many of the sectors we buy 100% local. In some of that we will never buy 100%. We will probably only buy 20 or 30%. But it's very important that distinction are made between the different sectors. So I'm not going to say anything more about it. The source material is there. Probably it's not important this slide, but it shows you I want to talk about the expectations. The cost I've spoken about this aside. This is a repeat of what I said earlier. Just look at how much we buy from government or state-owned enterprises. 45, if we put labor aside, which is about 25% of our cost. 45% of what we buy from either government in services or administered prices or from SOEs, which we have no control over. Let me show you what the impact is. What you have said there is the CPI. The black line is the CPI, the normal inflation rate. The blue line is if you take government out. The red line is government's costs coming into our market and into us as consumers. This is a Reserve Bank number. So you understand this cost pressure. Think again about the staircase. The cost pressure from underneath, and which we have very little control over. So it's quite important that that we understand this. And I'll be finished in 2 minutes. It is vital that we understand what we buy, and that what we buy is internationally known. Because the benefit to the suppliers is that anybody who is doing mining in Canada, Australia, or Europe, or Russia will know that we have a product that they can buy. And we as the mining companies will know what is actually going on. Sorry. And I'm not going to, this is the study that we've done, and the person that did it is in the audience. What we've proven actually is that we don't know. Again, we can look at the macro numbers, but we really do not know what bearing we're buying, and whether there's enough of that bought in South Africa that we can actually make it here. It's quite vital that we do that, and these are just theoretical work that has been done. It's quite clear that there is potential, but we need to do what we want to call digitalize the inputs that we buy. And just to give you an idea of the mining sectors, and I'm done, approach initially, we were quite worried about the 60% local procurement target. And when we started investigating this and we started to understand the supply chain and the procurement processes in the companies, we quickly realized that there are huge savings to be made here. One company discovered, for example, what they call not a pigeonhole, squirrel hole, worth $5 billion sitting somewhere. Tires that were bought for a piece of equipment that were procured and never used. But it's lying there, it's not for free. So the initial resistance to this has changed completely to enthusiasm to actually do this properly. The key is that we need to understand what we buy to make that visible to the suppliers, and the suppliers be visible to the international demand for mining. And like I showed you, we are only 4%. There's a 96% market out there that we can tap on, and that the mining companies understand what's going on, and that we have some coordination. The SABS is now involved, and we hope that this process will really give us a grip on what we do and will enhance the DTI's and the presidency's idea about reimagining industrialization. So, although we often not successful, and it isn't as simple as I tried to explain to you, there is great resolve to actually make this work in mining and for the country.
Thank you very much, Hank. That was an insightful talk you gave to us. Earlier in the morning, I made a comment that we had left out our sisters and our mothers. And
by just honoring and greeting our guests in the proper manner. I would like to welcome the acting premier, the MECs present, all the traditional the CEOs of the mining houses, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Welcome to this very important session. Michael, can I please have my presentation, if you don't mind? Come to the ladies' aid. Thank you. So I'm going to continue with the theme, local is lekker. And I think we've been bombarded with a lot of numbers today. So I'm also going to cite some numbers and talk about some numbers, but I don't want us to focus on the numbers. I want us to listen to the story that the numbers is telling us. For me, that's more important. And also what is important is the case for localization. Because if we're going to focus on the numbers too much, we're going to get bombarded. And we're going to get hung up on numbers too much. So my approach is, you'll see numbers, and some of it differs from what he presented. Let's not get caught up in that, but let's just listen to the story behind the numbers. Having said that, I am Estelle Solomon, and I am the regional manager for the Northwest Province. So IDC, for those of you that don't know, IDC is a development finance institution with a national footprint, and there's a number of sectors that we actually cover, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but obviously, coming to the next slide, the most important sectors or value chains, as we call it, would be our metals value chain, our chemicals and textiles, and agro-processing. We have other supporting sectors as well, what we call new industries. In new industries, you will find some activities around the fourth industrial revolution, etc. And then we also look at industrial infrastructure, which is also at the core and the bedrock of the economy. Then moving on to IDC's focus areas. Earlier on it was mentioned, so IDC is quite important, being a state-owned entity, to focus on government's key priorities. So for us, then our key focus areas would be to look at black industrialists. Job creation becomes critical. We are indeed a development finance institution. Women-owned, we spoke about that, and I think the MC alluded to the fact that we need to take cognizance of women in mining, women in industry, and indeed women standing in front of you and presenting. And then obviously I think our most important stakeholder being the youth, and what is it that we need to do from a youth perspective. These are all areas that's important for the IDC. And as you can see, there's a big red blob on the presentation, and it screams loud and clear, localization. I think earlier on our SBU had mentioned that localization is a key strategy for the IDC, and it actually forms part of our targets. So from an IDC perspective, we are serious about localization. And continuing with the story. So if you look at IDC at a very high level, our key objective is to increase industrial capacity. And how do we do that? We do that through supporting sectors with immediate impact. And again, bold in red, promoting local procurement and localization. And obviously, increase public policy. And how do we do this? We do this through our key value chain. And again, metals and mining in bold and in red. Chemicals and textiles, and then agro-processing, as I mentioned earlier. So again, bold, red, the story that we bring. So metals and mining was bold and red. So why localization in mining? And I think Hank gave us a beautiful picture in terms of the spend, in terms of the input costs, in terms of what we sell out to the global market. It's given us a very good context of how big this localization market is. But just to bring it back home, from an IDC perspective, we have spent 10 billion rand in the last 5 years in the mining industry. We also understand that mining contributes about 11.5% to South Africa's GDP. We also understand that mining is a significant employer in the South African economy. And we also understand there's a potential spend in excess of 90 billion. So the mining industry is then critical for us to achieve these targets of localization at a national level and even at industry level. So why the Northwest? I obviously have particular interest in the Northwest. So just some key information around the Northwest. We have offices in Brits, Mafeking, and Rustenburg. And we also have some satellite offices in Clarksdorp in Freiburg. And one of our key responsibilities, other than interacting with stakeholders like we're doing today, is obviously to go out there and do business development and find new projects and business for the IDC. And for us, then having sessions like this then becomes critical. And for me, the most critical thing really is to align ourselves and to achieve the objectives at a provincial level with the provincial government, but obviously at a national level, that becomes important for us as well. So the key focus areas in terms of the Northwest, very similar to IDC, but specifically for us, it's around agro-processing, tourism, manufacturing, mining. So some of the numbers for the Northwest in the last couple of years. So over the last 5 years, total investment from the Northwest perspective, and this is all industries, 3.5 billion. Total number of jobs that we've created, 16,753 jobs. Total investment in women and youth, we can definitely do better there. 182 million, and jobs that we've created, 4,821. Total investment in mining, 1.6 billion. Jobs that we've created, 9,832 jobs. So mining from a Northwest perspective, from an investment, from IDC's perspective, we've spent or we've invested 46% of that 3.5 billion in mining. Again, the story that I'm reading is the mining sector is a key stakeholder for us to achieve these localization targets. I'm not going to go through the mining statistics other than to say from a Northwest perspective, platinum is the biggest employer, and obviously platinum is the second largest player in the mining industry. Again, the same story that I'm reading. So for me, having listened to all the other speakers, there's some key issues that I think that we need to take out and that we need to act on. So early on when the DMR spoke, they spoke about the issues of complaints around procurement exclusion. We had Hank speak about the cost of providing the services. We had Hank speak about competitiveness. He spoke about scale. He spoke about inefficiencies. The other key stakeholders, government, and we're probably going to hear about this later, around policy issues, licensing. These are all the critical issues that is required to achieve these localization targets. And what is IDC's role in all of this? So for me, IDC's key role in ensuring that we achieve these targets would be that role of facilitation, funding being the obvious one. But I want to also latch onto the issue of scale. IDC is perfectly poised to enable that scale, not just at a local level, but preparing your service providers for that global stage. IDC can assist with that scale from a funding perspective. And that's how we then weave the story together. And it's important for us here today not to just talk, but to then come up with some of these key actions in terms of how are we going to address some of these challenges, the complaints, the cost of inputs, the role of innovation in terms of localization, and how we're then going to address the issue of inefficiencies so that we can become competitive in supplying the goods and services in mind. So it's important that we bring all these elements together and we agree on, and we make commitments in terms of what is it that we're going to do to help solve these problems. So in closing, I would like to say that localization of the mining industry is a strategic imperative for job creation and economic development. It's not a nice to have. And we have to move forward and come up with these concrete plans today and concrete actions to then achieve these targets as said. I thank you.